What's up? What's going on, everybody? And welcome to yet another podcast episode. In this episode of the Performance Lens, we are going to be talking about injuries and how you can start to get over your aches, pains, and injuries. Let's get into it. I'm trying to make this as quick as possible. So, in order to get rid of your injuries, right, you first have to start doing one thing, and that's going to be looking for the root cause of the problem. Most people are running around like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to solve symptoms. And if you just solve symptoms, you may not actually ever get to the root cause of the problem, and you can spend 10 to 20 years focusing on chasing different symptoms, right? And you actually make minimal progress in 10 years. Chances are you probably go back, right? Because most people don't even stay with things that aren't working for them for 10 years. They try it for more like 10 days, and then if it doesn't work for them, they're out, right? But that's because a lot of people are just unaware of the injury, of what happens when you have aches, pains, and injuries, right? Number one, when you have an injury, any sort of recovery there's no linear recovery from injury. Like, most times people think, oh, I'm gonna get better. Today, I'm gonna be here, tomorrow I'm gonna be here, and then next week I'm here. That's not really how injuries work. Sometimes they work out that way, but a lot of times it's like whoosh, 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 right? Like you're constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down, right? And you have to know that that's what it is. Not only can your results do that, my glasses are super dirty. Not only can your results go up and down, right? Meaning that you have pain one day and then the next day you don't have pain, and then maybe it's like excruciating one day and then it kind of dies off the next, right? Over a longer time horizon, yes, it does get better if you're doing the right things, but just even if you are quote unquote doing the right things, sometimes you might get more pain and for like a day or two, and then you have to go into it and see what are you doing wrong, or are you doing anything wrong. Like sometimes that's just the nature of it. The injuries just don't recover in a linear fashion, especially if you're dealing with any rips and tears and things like that. Those things do not recover in a linear fashion at all, right? So I wouldn't focus on, okay, am I getting better like right now, right? Like, yes, you can definitely measure that, but having that like stress you out is not going to help with your recovery process. Now, I digress, but we're going to go into the 4-step system that you need in order to finally solve your aches and pains, not just run around chasing the symptoms, right? So one is assess. Assess is a very, 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 very important. Did I say very important? Did I emphasize that just now? Yes, extremely important, right? The reason why assessment is extremely important is because you need to know what is going on in your body that could be causing this pain. For example, you can get higher pain levels from lack of sleep, from excess stress, right? And you have many different forms of stress, right? You have chemical stress, the things that you're putting in your body and on your body, right? And this could be food, this could be other products, right? Then you have environmental stress, you have physical stress, like literally on your body. Then you have mental stress, you got financial stress, you got all these things, right? You got all these different kinds of stressors. So if you're having aches and pains and issues in your body, right? This could be why you're not able to recover, simply because your body hasn't properly gotten rid of the stress, right? So that's a high possibility, and chances are there's a little bit of that going on, right? So now we have to look at, so that's assess, and it's not just having to do with your nutrition. It has to do with, okay, what movements hurt and what movements don't hurt. Where do I have stimulation? Where do I feel weak? Where do I feel strong? Or do I have overstimulation in a certain area, right? These are all questions that you want to answer. There's a whole host of questions that I ask people, and those are just like very simple examples, but those are going to be questions that you need the answers to. What movements can you do? What movements can't you do? What do you have what ranges of motion do you have that you have control over? Do you have a short range of motion that you can control, or a large range of motion that you can control, right? So that's assessment. That's assessment, figuring out what the heck is going on inside of the body. The next phase is going to be de-stressing, right? So de-stressing the system. After you go through the assessment, you realize what is overstimulated and overstressed, right? And you're able to now come up with a protocol to de-stress. Now, this could literally be a general de-stressing of your entire self, or this could be a de-stressing of actual muscle tissues, tendons, and ligaments, right? With different exercise protocols, right? This could also have to do with you actually going on some kind of cleanse to de-stress your organs, right? Because if your organs aren't functioning properly and they're super inflamed, what they can do is start to give you back pain because they're inflamed in that area, right? Here, and what's happening is you're getting instability in your core. That could be one thing. So that's part of de-stressing. The next phase that we would go into is stimulation. So now with any injury, right? Or some chronic pain, chances are you have some compensation patterns. And in compensation patterns, there are some things that get overly long, right? So some things, for example, a lot of people, their back in certain areas, not in the whole thing, but in certain sections of the back can be overly lengthened. Like when you have a curved spine like this, right? My upper back is overly lengthened, right? So we need to figure out a way to actually stimulate that, because this position right here is stimulating for everything in front here, right? But these are not the muscles that you really want to get strong in order to hold you upright. So we have to figure out how to stimulate the muscles in the back. This is one example, right? You can do this throughout the body. You can do this with the neck. You can do this with the arms, right? You can do this with the knees, with any part of the body, right? But this is just a back example. And after you're able to do the back, right? Then you go, or not after you're able to do the back, after you do the stimulation, then we have to go into coordination, right? And the coordination part is super important because, and this is a part that most people forget, right? What they do is, and now I used to work with people only in person on a table or in front of me where we would physically work on them, right? But what I've realized is that some people can't work like that all the time. And I mean, I definitely want to reach out to more people. So I'm just taking a quick break here to remind you that if you are interested in this 4-step system, go ahead and book your assessment call down below, because then we can go over what are your aches and pains and what ways we can help solve your aches and pains. And it's a completely tailored custom program. So we just need to figure out what's going on with you and your body. But we'll go back to coordination. So again, coordination is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, right? And actually not even don't pay attention to, but they just aren't aware of. Because coordination literally means rhythm, right? So if you don't have good glenohumeral scapular rhythm, right? That was a mouthful. I could barely say that, right? That basically means that, and this is just one example for your shoulder, but like you have a ball and socket joint in your shoulder, right? And whenever your shoulder's moving, not only is this humerus bone moving, right? But it fits inside of a ball and socket. Not only is it there, but you have muscles in your rotator cuff, basically on your scapula, right? That move. And it moves like this and in and out, right? And that's your scapula. Now, if your scapula is not working alongside your humerus, right? If those two things are not coordinated, even if you take the tension off of the shoulder, right? You're not going to be able to get enough strength to be able to move properly, right? And be able to stabilize yourself. So it's not just strength, but you have to get your body working with each other. We don't work in isolation. We don't work just bicep, right? Whenever you do a bicep curl, you have the hand, right? The muscles in the hand holding the weight, right? And those muscles in the hand are also going to be connected to the muscles in your forearm here, holding the weight. Then you're going to be connected here, right? So that right there is, you're spanning over about 6-7 different muscles, right? just to do a bicep curl, and you think that you're only working your biceps, right? So we have to break this notion that you can strengthen just one muscle at a time. There's a group of muscles that are working at one time, and instead of focusing on just one muscle, right? Because if you're doing any sort of athletics, or if you're just doing anything other than just lifting in the gym, you're using a whole host of different muscles at the same time. Like, not that lifting doesn't do that, but if you hop on a machine, you don't get the full coordination of everything. That's why the machine strength doesn't translate into strength on like a dumbbell or a barbell, right? That's why those two strengths don't compute, right? You can get really strong on a machine, but because your whole body's not in coordination, right? So you're missing out that whole part. And why do you think that when you go from the machine to actually just like moving around your body, it feels different? Because the coordination's not there, and that's one aspect, and that's a rabbit hole that you can dive deep into, which that's for later episodes. But really, you want the coordination to be there, because it doesn't make sense for you to be. You have to have the coordination in there. Let me just put it this way: you have to have the coordination in there, because you could be a person that is really flexible, and flexible could mean that you could put your hands fully on the ground standing up, right? So this means you just have a really good forward fold, right? That could mean flexible, right? And then somebody could say you're really strong, right? And strong could mean that you can squat a lot, right? And then you would assume that because this person is flexible and they can squat a lot, you would assume that this person can run fast and jump high. That's not the case. It's absolutely not the case at all. It's not the same thing, because there's a whole nother layer of coordination, of coordinating those muscle groups and those muscles that work together. Just because you can stretch, and just because you can objectively be strong however you're looking at it, right, doesn't mean that stuff is going to coordinate into any sort of athletic movement or any sort of movements at all, right? If you're practicing movements and patterns, then you can get stronger at those movements and patterns. But if the patterns that you're practicing only have application in that pattern, then it's very hard for you to progress. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're practicing a running pattern and you're never practicing bicep curls, right? Then you probably won't be that great at bicep curls. You might be decent, because in your running, right? If you're really doing running a lot, you're actually doing a part of a bicep curl, right? So that could transfer over, but does it matter that you're strong at bicep curls unless you're a strict curler, that you're in competition? It's not that you can't do bicep curls, but it's that when you strictly focus on that, you don't get the coordination benefits, right? So all you can do is bring your arm up and down, but life rarely works that way, right? Chances are, if you're in regular life trying to do anything, right, if you're carrying something, you're gonna have to stabilize your core, right? You're gonna have to stabilize your back. You're gonna have to take steps. You're gonna have to be able to have good grip strength in holding different objects. That's gonna be the things that transfer over, right? So when you're thinking about coordination, that's what I mean. Also, what I mean by coordination is, if you've ever heard of like farm boy strength or something like that, like farmer strength, right? Farmers will do a certain movement pattern a lot, and this will develop them in a certain way, like their hands, their arms, their back, their core will get developed because they were doing certain things over and over and over again, and they're building that coordination. And that farm strength can be taken over into many different aspects. Now, if you just isolate a movement for them, they're probably not going to be that great at it. But when you go into some sort of athletic endeavors, or maybe you just do regular everyday life things, right? They are going to be more efficient because they've done similar patterns like that a lot. In the gym, you're able to isolate things, which is cool, but you have to know what you're really going for. If you're going for athletic ability, you want to train patterns, and you want to train in coordination. If you're just training for muscle hypertrophy, which is going to be getting muscles bigger, right, then you want to train in a lot of volume that pumps a lot of blood into the muscles and rips a lot of muscle fibers. But to become strong and athletic and coordinated, you don't actually need any of that. You don't actually need to lift weights in that manner, right? So there's so many different nuances to the coordination that you need to have, or that you feel you need to have, right, in your body. And you can't get that stuff from regular exercises, because the regular exercises rarely travel into regular everyday life. Right? If you're doing something sitting still and not really moving that much, that doesn't transfer over well into regular everyday life, because in everyday life, you're not really sitting down in that position. So that's all I got here. Peace.